We're seeing record high cases, deaths, and hospitalizations in the U.S. right now, and those numbers are climbing. How bad do you expect things to get over the next 3 or 4 months before the vaccine is widely available?
Well, sadly, the next 4 to 6 months could be the worst of the epidemic. The IHME forecast shows over 200,000 additional deaths. If we would follow the rules in terms of wearing masks and not mixing, we could avoid a large percentage of those deaths. So, in the near term, it's bad news.
You've been sounding the alarm on the threat posed by infectious diseases and pandemics for years. Even in your wildest dreams, did you think it would ever get this bad in the United States?
No, I thought the United States would do a better job handling it. Overall, when I did the forecast in 2015, I talked about the deaths potentially being higher. So this virus could be more fatal than it is. We didn't get the worst case. But the thing that's surprised me is that the economic impact in the US and around the world has been much greater than the forecast that I made 5 years ago.
Your foundation just announced a new $250 million pledge to help fight COVID. That's in addition to the more than $1 billion you've already committed. Why did you do this? And specifically, where's the money going to go?
We saw a unique role for us. We've been funding a lot of the research for the vaccines. We're very agile. We're a partner in a thing called CEPI, which is the second biggest funder after the US government. So in diagnostic therapy and vaccines, we know where the science is. We know how the pieces need to come together in an urgent way. And so our expertise in infectious disease, which normally only relates to developing countries, applied to the entire world for this crisis.
These vaccines were created and tested in record time, under a year. According to the data right now, they have a very high effectiveness, more than 90%. How much credit for the success do you think Operation Warp Speed and President Trump deserve?
Well, the mRNA vaccines, which the first two are, our foundation and others have been backing for quite some time. Now, Pfizer teamed up with BioNTech, a partner of ours, and did not take government money, so they, went out on their own. Moderna got money before there was an Operation Warp Speed, back when it was the just called BARDA, and that money did help them take a risk because they're not a large company, and they got help on some of their trials work. So the U.S. R&D funding, which had been there for pandemics well before this administration, that was a contribution greater than any other country.
President Trump signed an executive order that he says prioritizes distribution of the vaccine to Americans before it goes to people in other countries. It's not entirely clear how the order will achieve that. But what do you think of that strategy, that approach, that everyone in the United States should be vaccinated first, and then the U.S. should pivot, or these private companies should pivot to helping the rest of the world?
Well, I think we need to help all of humanity here. We want the world economy to be going. We want to minimize the deaths. And, the basic technology is a German company. And so blocking international sharing and cooperation has been disruptive and a mistake during this entire pandemic. So we need to ramp up the capacity of all the vaccines. There will be some additional ones approved in the months ahead that are easier to scale up the manufacturing. But the U.S. Has benefited from other countries' work here, and we shouldn't be entirely selfish in how we go forward.
So, in your view, America first, as the president might call it, not the right approach?
Well, the extreme idea that everybody should die until we have the very last American vaccinated, that's hardly the appropriate response.
Do you think one of these vaccines is better than the other?
No. The data on Moderna and Pfizer look very similar. Other vaccines are likely to be about the same. Even the AstraZeneca, where there's a little bit of confusion about the numbers. It prevented severe disease in a very dramatic way. And so I'm super happy with all of these vaccines.
A new Pew Research poll out last week showed that only 60% of the American people say they intend to get vaccinated. That includes less than half of Black Americans. How worried are you about the reluctance of Americans to take a vaccine, particularly among minority communities?
I think we have a real communications challenge that you've got to find out who do people trust, make sure they've got the data. I hope as people see it being this vaccine rolled out and reducing the death rate, reducing transmission to people you care about, that 60% number will go up. You know, for some jobs, like working in a nursing home, the government could decide that it's important for those people to be vaccinated because that'll save a lot of lives. And so the track record will be developed, and I think we'll get over the 70% that should reduce the transmission dramatically.
President-elect Biden joined with former Presidents Obama and Bush and Clinton, suggesting that they would all take the vaccine publicly. Are you considering doing the same?
No, I'll do the same. When it's my turn, I'm not going to budge. But when my turn comes up, I will visibly take the vaccine because I think that it's a benefit to all people to not be transmitting.
Are you at all concerned about the wealthy and well-connected being able to get access to a vaccine before it's their turn, before most other Americans?
You know, it should be based on medical need, not wealth at all. After all, this epidemic has been awful in the way that it's exacerbated inequities. It's been worse for Hispanics, worse for Blacks, worse for low-income service workers, multi-generational households, a number of things that mean that in terms of picking who gets the vaccine, we better be using equity to drive all those decisions.
More than 30 million people in California are right now under brand new stay-at-home orders as hospitals there risk being overwhelmed. There are a lot of governors who oppose bringing back these lockdown orders and forcing businesses to close. What do you think? Do you think more states need to consider taking that kind of drastic action and the kind of drastic action we saw when the pandemic first began, or can there be a more nuanced approach?
Well, certainly mask wearing has essentially no downside. They're not expensive. Bars and restaurants in most of the country will be closed as we go into this wave. And I think, sadly, that's appropriate. Depending on how severe it is, the decision about schools is much more complicated because the benefits are pretty high. The amount of transmission is not the same as in restaurants and bars. So, trade-offs will have to be made. But the next 4 to 6 months really call on us to do our best, because we can see that this will end, and you don't want somebody you love to be the last to die of coronavirus.
When do you think life will fully return to what we thought of as normal back in January? No masks, no social distancing, no other protective measures necessary.
Certainly by the summer, we'll be way closer to normal than we are now. But even through early 2022, unless we help other countries get rid of this disease and we get high vaccination rates in our country, the risk of reintroduction will be there. And of course, the global economy will be slowed down, which hurts America economically in a pretty dramatic way. So we'll have, starting in the summer, about 9 months where a few things like big public gatherings will still be restricted. But we can see now that somewhere between 12 to 18 months, we have a chance, if we manage it well, to get back to normal.
And obviously, we're changing administrations, we're changing governments right in the middle of this unprecedented effort to distribute the vaccine. Are you worried that the changeover between administrations and the reluctance of President Trump to acknowledge the reality of his loss, the delay of the transition, that it could complicate the process.
Yeah, transition is complicating, but the new administration is willing to rely on actual experts and not attack those experts. You know, they're laying out clear plans. So I think we'll get through this in a positive way. You know, I'm pleased with the people and the priority that the President-elect Biden and his team are bringing to bear on this problem. And Biden's doing his best to retain Francis Collins and Tony Fauci and add them to that strong group of people. You know, these are people who are willing to admit when things aren't going well, you know, and deliver tough messages, particularly about the next 4 to 6 months. And so, you know, I do think the U.S. will not be one of the worst performers as the team comes into office.